Hey everybody, I'm Ryan. Today, we're going to talk about ZOTH in World of Warcraft lore. If you want to learn more about anything I mentioned in the video, if I've done videos on them, links to those are in the description. From the beginning, the primordial force of the Void has been trying to consume and twist reality into a realm of darkness. Entities formed from the Void, which work to this end. The Void Lords. They watched the Titans and envied their power, and concluded in order to twist the universe into a realm of darkness, they needed to corrupt one of the Titans. Through tremendous effort, the Void Lords began seeping into the physical universe. Their goal was to infect a Titan before it had awakened, also known as World Souls. Some worlds in the universe contained sleeping Titans, but the Void Lords didn't know which ones, so they pooled their power together to create dark creatures and thrust them into the universe in random directions, hoping some would land on a world with a World Soul. They would corrupt worlds they landed on, whether they had a Titan in them or not. During Azeroth's primordial era, while elementals still controlled the world, old gods plummeted down from the sky. They slammed into the surface and embedded themselves across the world. There were mountains of black flesh, tentacles, and eyes. They worked to spread their corruption across the world, and dug their tendrils into its surface, digging towards the heart of Azeroth, its world soul. The old gods, Y'Shaarj, C'Thun, N'Zoth, and Yogg-Saron, formed the Black Empire and went to war against the elemental lords of Azeroth. However, no matter how many old gods' servants died, more would spawn, and the war would end with the elementals enslaved to the old gods. The Black Empire spread unopposed, making the world a place of darkness and suffering. Y'Shaarj, being the strongest, controlled the bulk of the empire. N'Zoth, C'Thun, and Yogg-Saron would war with each other for the rest of the land. N'Zoth controlled a large amount of land in eastern Azeroth, covering much of what would become known as the Eastern Kingdoms. When Aggramar of the Titans found Azeroth and reported to the Pantheon, they were horrified. They were afraid of harming Azeroth further by intervening themselves, so they created the Titan Forged, which were stone and metal beings. Some of these Titan Forged were given the likeness and powers of some of the Titans themselves. They were the Keepers. The Titan Forged and the Keepers made war on the old gods and the Black Empire. The Titan Forged and the Keepers attacked Y'Shaarj, but could not defeat him, so Aman'Thul decided it was worth the risk to rip Y'Shaarj from Azeroth. But the old gods' tendrils were deeper into Azeroth than they had thought, and it left a massive scar on the world. To avoid damaging Azeroth further, they decided to imprison the remaining old gods, starting with N'Zoth. The plan was to battle the old gods directly. Then, Archaedas would create underground prison chambers to contain them, and Mimiron would fashion machinery to lock the old gods in place. Then Loken would imbue the prison with enchantments to neutralize the old god corruption. The Keepers and the Titan Forge then fought their way through swarms of Aqir and Niraki, southeast to the weakest of the old gods, N'Zoth. They overwhelmed the old god and subdued it. They then encased N'Zoth in an underground prison between the Well of Eternity and where Uldaman would one day be built. They then went on to imprison the other two old gods, C'Thun and Yogg-Saron, in the same way. After the War of the Ancients, where Queen Azshara attempted to use the powers of the Well of Eternity to summon Sargeras into Azeroth, the well collapsed, which split the single continent on Azeroth and sucked Queen Azshara and the Highborne into the ocean, where N'Zoth's corruption had reached. Queen Azshara's arcane shield that was protecting her and the Highborne from drowning was failing, as a fish with red eyes whispered to her to let go and give up. The fish revealed itself to be possessed by N'Zoth and showed Azshara visions of the Black Empire of the old gods that had ruled in ages past, and offered to save her and her people, in exchange for being the old god's servant. Azshara told the old god that she would not be a servant, but a queen to rule at its side. N'Zoth could accept the offer, or be left with no servants, and have no way to free itself. Reluctantly, N'Zoth agreed, and transformed her and the Highborne into the fish-like Naga, saving them. Shortly after the Sundering, N'Zoth sent out heralds to recruit people to his cause. One of these heralds was Zek'voz, who went to the shores of Zandalar to bring the tribe under the rule of N'Zoth. When he went to Uldir, he was captured, studied, disassembled, and stored in the Titan's archives. The world tree Andrassil was planted in Northrend to stop the spread of the old god blood Saronite from infecting Azeroth. Unfortunately, its roots reached the prison of the old god Yogg-Saron, who used the tree to make a connection between the Emerald Dream and the old gods. While Yogg-Saron did not use this connection much, N'Zoth, being the weakest, saw this as an opportunity to spread corruption and contribute in forming the Emerald Nightmare. After Azeroth's adventurers defeated Cthulhu and Yogg-Saron, N'Zoth remained untouched under the ocean, though the old god felt that there was a window of opportunity that was rapidly closing while the world still recovered from the Lich King, and there was still infighting among the dragon aspects. The time to usher in the Hour of Twilight was now, and N'Zoth chose the former dragon aspect, Deathwing, to be its herald. Deathwing was in Deepholm, and already corrupted by the old gods, still recovering from unleashing the dragon soul on his kin during the War of the Ancients. N'Zoth fed void energies into Deathwing, making the black dragon even more powerful, but also making him unstable. N'Zoth had Twilight cultists go to Deepholm and bolt Elementium plates to stabilize the dragon and prevent his body from being ripped apart. N'Zoth then reached out to others on the elemental plane who had once been enslaved to the old gods. Two of the elemental lords, Therazane and Neptulon, refused to serve N'Zoth again, but Aqir and Ragnaros agreed. Once Deathwing was ready, he would burst out of Deepholm, making a connection between Azeroth and the elemental plane, and providing an escape route for Ragnaros and Aqir to terrorize the physical plane. N'Zoth made Deathwing believe, by doing so, he could claim the world as his own, but in reality, N'Zoth planned to toss Deathwing aside after using him to create the Black Empire. Eventually, N'Zoth gave the order, and Deathwing burst from Deepholm into Azeroth, and led to the Cataclysm of Azeroth. Many devastations raged across the world. This also released Aqir and Ragnaros from their prisons. Aqir assaulted Uldum, attempting to claim the Forge of Origination, while Ragnaros assaulted Hyjal and the World Tree Nordrassil. Meanwhile, Queen Azshara and the Naga went to Vashj'ir to make Neptulon, who defied N'Zoth, suffer, and vying for Neptulon's power to control the seas, so N'Zoth could cut off sea travel between the continents. With all these campaigns happening at once, only one needed to succeed in order for N'Zoth to usher in the Hour of Twilight, and N'Zoth was sure the Horde and Alliance could not stop them all. Aqir is eventually confronted by the heroes of Azeroth, and conducts himself honorably in the battle, but is defeated. Ragnaros was defeated by the combined forces of the Cenarion Circle, the Green Dragonflight, the Champions of Azeroth, and the Wild Gods. Heroes of Azeroth worked with the Bronze Dragonflight to retrieve the dragon soul from the past, and brought it to present-day Wyrmrest Temple. The dragon aspects enthrall, taking the place of the aspect of Earth, Deathwing, empowered the dragon soul. Deathwing, Nuraki, and the Twilight cultists assaulted Wyrmrest Temple. Thrall used the empowered dragon soul to hurt Deathwing horribly, and Deathwing fled towards the Maelstrom to get back to Deepholm. In a final, desperate attempt to stave off the defeat of his servant, N'Zoth infused Deathwing with more void power than ever before. Thrall unleashed the final power of the dragon soul on Deathwing, finally killing him. N'Zoth's push to bring about the Hour of Twilight was squashed. Years later, the Emerald Nightmare was reawakened by Xavius, while Azeroth focused on fighting the Burning Legion. This corruption was eventually stopped, but it took valuable resources away from their war with the Legion. Malfurion sensed an ancient evil, N'Zoth, underneath Azeroth's oceans. Xal'atath, an enchanted blade dating back to the Black Empire that was recovered and used as a weapon against the Burning Legion, mentioned that the old god of the deep, meaning N'Zoth, was slowly breaking free of its prison. During all this time, N'Zoth had been fueling tensions between the Alliance and Horde, which eventually erupted into a full-blown war that took the eyes off them, allowing it to regain strength and plot more openly. Later on, in Stormsong Valley, Azshara and the Naga worked to corrupt the Tide Sages, and N'Zoth even directly sent Faceless Ones to corrupt the citizens there into Aqir, with Lord Stormsong himself heralding their coming. The Blade Xal'atath had a bargain with N'Zoth to bring Azeroth's champions to the Crucible of Storms with the powerful relics they had recovered. In fulfilling their bargain, N'Zoth freed Xal'atath, but instructed her to leave the blade she was in, so that the blade may continue serving N'Zoth. N'Zoth then granted Xal'atath its gift, which would allow them to see all the truths the old gods see. N'Zoth also began blessing heroes of the Horde and Alliance. The Alliance would get rid of the gift via painful ritual, and the Horde cleansed it via the Loa Akunda. A group of heroes then entered the Crucible of Storms to reclaim the relics there and stop N'Zoth. The Horde discovered the empty blade Xal'atath, but power resonated within the blade, which compelled them to deliver it to Sylvanas, their war chief. As Sylvanas picked up the blade, N'Zoth prophesied that, quote, "The fall of night reveals her true face. She will only bring ruin." The Naga Azshara worked to break N'Zoth's bonds in the last Old God prison. Azshara was eventually successful, using the stolen Heart of Azeroth. Shortly after, N'Zoth pulls Azshara into his own realm, before she is executed by Lor'themar Theron and Jaina Proudmoore. Realizing that the war between the Alliance and the Horde was just a distraction from N'Zoth, both leaders resolved to overthrow the tyrannical war chief Sylvanas, so that they could unite their forces against the Old God. With N'Zoth freed, the Old God's corruption begins seeping throughout Azeroth, and its city, Neolotha, the Sleeping City, is awakened as well. This now waking city is the heart of the ancient Black Empire, and N'Zoth planned on making it the heart of the Black Empire again. N'Zoth seeked to merge Neolotha with Azeroth in the process, resurrecting the Black Empire. Champions of Azeroth prepared to venture into the realm and confront N'Zoth, like they had done with the other Old Gods. In various attempts to establish a foothold and an advantage against N'Zoth, the Old God had reached out to the champions of Azeroth, granting them visions. First, the Aman'Thul invaded the Forge of Origination, thinking the planet was officially too far gone, and the Forge of Origination should be activated, and life on the planet be destroyed. A minion of N'Zoth, Shithrus, the Manipulator, snuck in with Aman'Thul and Sun Prophet Tenhamen. Champions of Azeroth and the Explorers League were able to stop the Aman'Thul from wiping out life on the planet. As Shithrus died, Azeroth's champion received a vision, saying that they were N'Zoth's devoted chosen. The next plan was to use the power of the engine of Nalak Shah to the Forge of Origination to use as a weapon against N'Zoth. Azeroth's champions worked with Magni Bronzebeard, fighting the Mantid guarding the engine. N'Zoth once again reached out to the champion, saying that the Mantid swarms could sense the Old God's return to Azeroth, and that Azeroth's champion would be its herald. Magni also realized that N'Zoth was attempting to corrupt the Forge of Origination to use as a weapon itself. Deathwing's son, Wrathion, wanted to be rid of the Old God corruption that destroyed his father and his flight. Wrathion did not want to share that same fate, so he went to the King of Stormwind, Anduin, and is greeted by a punch to the face by the king. Anduin blames Wrathion for the death of his father Varian, because Wrathion engineered the freeing of Garrosh, and the creation of the Iron Horde in hopes that it would be powerful enough to defeat N'Zoth. This plan obviously failed, but it led to alternate reality Gul'dan summoning the Burning Legion, which led to the death of Anduin's father. Wrathion was able to convince Anduin to help him fight N'Zoth, and warned that the Old God will manipulate emotion to get people to act in ways contrary to their nature. So he worked with Azeroth's champions to find a way to better fight N'Zoth. They seeked out an object of pure corruption, which resulted in obtaining Azshara, a Shroud of Resolve, which would allow the champions to enter Ny'alotha and take the fight to the Old God. In Wrathion's pursuit to defeat N'Zoth so he and his flight would not be consumed by the same corruption as his father, his mind was unfortunately twisted by the very thing that he was fighting. N'Zoth was able to convince him that the only way to save Azeroth was to rule at the Old God's side, and he began calling himself the Black Emperor. Magni suddenly began hearing N'Zoth's voice in Azeroth's Chamber of Heart. Shortly after, N'Zoth attacked the chamber, opening a portal to Ny'alotha and releasing his army. Highkeeper Ra, Magni, the champion of Azeroth, and other defenders fought against the Old God's minions. Ra then closed the portal by attacking it with lightning, but was pulled into Ny'alotha in the process. But if Ra did not sacrifice himself, all of Azeroth would have been N'Zoth's if he was able to take the Chamber of Heart. Azeroth's champions ventured into Ny'alotha to save Azeroth and Ra. While Ra was under N'Zoth's control, N'Zoth took hold of the Keeper's despair and used it to overwhelm Ra's hope, causing him to do the Old God's will. They fought against the corrupted Wrathion, eventually making him see reason and rejoining the fight against N'Zoth. They also found Dark Inquisitor Zanesh torturing Azshara. After the champion defeated Zanesh, Azshara was done helping the Old God and said that she held Xal'atath and planned on driving it into N'Zoth's heart herself if the Horde and Alliance didn't stop her when she was opening N'Zoth's prison. She had obtained the blade from her dealings with Sylvanas. She was really working against N'Zoth this whole time. Azshara then gave Xal'atath to Wrathion, warning him if he did not kill N'Zoth with their first attack, they would not survive for another attempt. Wrathion then examined the blade to make sure it would actually kill N'Zoth, as Azshara claimed, while the champions fought through Ny'alotha towards N'Zoth. On the way, the champions were forced to put down the corrupted Ra. As the champions fought against N'Zoth, they lost their sanity to N'Zoth's whisperings, and it looked like they were going to lose. In that moment, Wrathion stabbed N'Zoth with Xal'atath, destroying the Old God's carapace and releasing N'Zoth's hold on the champions. During the battle, similar to the other Old Gods, visions assaulted the champions. These visions showed how N'Zoth corrupted Deathwing, and how Warchief Sylvanas Windrunner worked with Azshara to unleash a darkness, and only N'Zoth could save Azeroth. The Old God, however, was still strong, and it looked like the champions would not prevail. In the final moments, Azeroth herself intervened and granted the champions a surge of power to overcome N'Zoth. N'Zoth's body and Ny'alotha were destroyed, as the Heart of Azeroth used the Forge of Origination, powered by the engine of Nalak Shah on the Old God. N'Zoth, the last Old God, was finally dead. After N'Zoth's defeat, the world was rid of the threat of the Void for now. However, Azshara is yet to be seen. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please be sure to like and subscribe. Check me out on other social medias. Now the Old Gods are dead. That's pretty cool. Yeah? I'll see you next time. Bye.